Now from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, by the US National Security Analyst Arash Aramesh. Many thanks for speaking to us on World News, Arash. Let's talk first of all about these airstrikes south of the Iraqi capital. Do you think this marks a new phase in the US military mission in Iraq?
The president gave a speech just a couple of days ago expanding American and the U.S.'s role in the fight against the Islamic State or ISIS. And in that speech, he committed to more U.S. involvement. This is not something President Obama really wanted. He didn't want his legacy to be remembered as another war president. If you remember, he came to office. He actually won the primaries against Hillary Clinton because he was against the Iraq war, and he defeated John McCain because of his anti-war message. But now he's got to get involved. He has to defeat this cancerous tumor in the region called the Islamic State or ISIS. This is a new phase. The president has realized how important it is for the U.S. military and for U.S. forces and assets to get involved, both to help assets on the ground, the Iraqi military and the Kurdish Peshmerga, to fight against ISIS in Iraq, and also bolster and embolden and support our allies in Syria to fight against ISIS in Syria, and perhaps increase American military bombardments, aerial bombardments against ISIS in Iraq, and perhaps start bombarding and bombing ISIS positions in Syria, where the big chunk and the big bulk of ISIS forces remain in eastern Syria and the Raqqa province, and then in Hasaki.
You talked there about Iraq and Syria, two different challenges that the coalition of countries of the international community will be taking. What are specifically the different challenges that that Iraq and Syria individually pose when it comes to taking on IS fighters?
Let's start with Syria. There is an ongoing civil war in Syria. It started pretty much around March of 2011. It peaked in January of 2012. ISIS really didn't exist for the first year and a half of this conflict. Now, in Syria, you have the regime of President Bashar al-Assad fighting against opposition forces. One of the big, large opposition forces fighting against Syria is the terrorist Islamic State, ISIS. But there are other opposition forces. Unfortunately, the more secular, the more moderate forces in Syria have been significantly marginalized because A, we didn't support them early on, and B, when jihadi fighters showed up with better guns and better morale and better funding, a lot of the fighters fled the Free Syrian Army and joined ISIS. So that's one problem. You got a government there that has not invited the U.S. to come in. Let's not forget that the Syrian government has also some degree of somewhat sophisticated air defense systems. But again, that is not going to be a problem for American aerial power. On the other hand, in Iraq, you have a government in Iraq that has openly invited American support and American assistance. From every aspect of international law, we are welcome to go to Iraq and help them clean house against ISIS. The problem there is that we do not want to help the Iraqi Shiite government to do internal house cleaning and factional sectarian cleaning at our expense. We want to make sure that the Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shiites are all included in the government of Prime Minister Haidari, who just took the oath of office. That's the problem. Having said that, you got this ongoing regional war between Iran, a major Shiite power in the region, and Saudi Arabia, a major Sunni power in the region. And that adds a lot more to the complication of the situation here.
You mentioned Iran there. We know that Tehran didn't send a diplomat or a representative, rather, to Paris for this international convention that's been taking place. Why is Iran seemingly so against taking on ISIS?
While Iran cannot find a worse enemy than ISIS. Let's not forget that ISIS, these are radical Wahhabi Sunnis, and their first enemy before Israel, before the West, before the U.S., the biggest enemy of radical Sunnis are Shiites, and Iran is the largest Shiite country in the region. Having said that, the Iranian leadership, especially under the leadership of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, turns to follow this very suspicious, this untrustworthy view of America and of the West. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader who was just released from the hospital, made fun of the Americans and said, look, ISIS was your own creation. His sort of paranoid thinking that ISIS was an American or Western creation. And he thinks any sort of Iranian assistance in this fight will only embolden the American position. Having said that, again, Iran is going to benefit greatly. And Iranian leaders know that too, but they're going to benefit greatly from the defeat of ISIS because Iran's greatest allies in the region are the Iraqi Shiite government and the president of Syria, President Bashar al-Assad. They're going to love this. They're going to like it, even if they don't come to the negotiating table, even if they don't come to Paris to join the negotiations. We already know they're helping Shiite militias in the region to help ISIS, even if it's for the wrong reasons.
Arash, it's always great to speak to you. Arash Aramesh there. Thank you very much for your analysis.